Previously on...
Why am I here?
Morning, Mr. Duvet_7.
Excuse me, doctor. What happened to me?
You stunted too hard, you've had to be taken to the hospital. Anyways, here's the bill.
How much?
Welcome to America.
Yo, what up? Listen, I've gotten myself in a little financial issue.
I'll take that action.
This is Bobby. Bobby's very based. Not only did he pay my hospital bills, but he also introduced me to Juice 2, a place where you get to battle against top-level racers, travel around the world, be surrounded by beautiful ladies, and own lots of high-performance cars. All taking place within this piece of disc, a sequel to the very first Juiced game, carrying the name of Hot Import Nights, a real-life brand responsible for hosting a lot of automotive showcases, car meets, and a lot of events revolving around car culture. Also, they still exist to this day. The same cannot be said regarding Juiced games though, or any publisher they've run across. Juiced game was previously known as part of Rage Games or Rage Software, a British game developer formed back in the year 1992. They worked on a sizable amount of games during their lifespan, but for the sake of time, we'll just go through the most relevant games. The unreleased Lamborghini game. I've mentioned this game in my manufacturer video before, and just as I had stated in that vid, a lot of the ideas that would later be visualized in the Juiced games originates from here. From the high-stakes betting, pink slip battles, and the focus on wacky characters along some level of passion towards car culture of the time. Or at least for that game, a whole slew of Lamborghinis. The game, however, never truly released due to Rage Software going bankrupt in 2003, until 2 decades later when the game finally gets a time and the spotlight in its unfinished state. The studio, now having to look for a new publisher, approached Acclaim with their new title being the first Juice installment, only for Acclaim to also go bankrupt while the game was in development. As a result, the game was delayed by a year as publishing rights would shift hands to THQ. The game was quite a success, as I mentioned in the Juice 1 video. It was one of the best-selling games at the time for the UK region. To capitalize on this success, the team would immediately develop a follow-up, shaking things up even further while also bringing back old ideas from the unreleased Lamborghini game, and in the process bring in Hot Import Nights as a sponsor to help with their vision of making a racing game surrounding the idea of car culture while still having that risky and adrenaline-fueled high-stakes racing to the forefront. The game was developed over 2 years and released in 2007, taking a completely different approach than its predecessor, for the most part, including this.
Also, Games for Windows Live had this cool feature, so whenever you open your game, there was a 10% chance of your save file getting absolutely corrupted.
Unfortunately, this monstrosity is also the main reason why online multiplayer is dead, at least on PC. Also killing the live career mode, which I'm assuming simply replaces the AI opponents with actual players, which means we get to focus solely on the normal career mode, starting off with a selection and customization of the player avatar. There's not much options here, but it's not exactly a bad thing. Unlike something like Test Drive Unlimited, which came out a year before, Juice 2 isn't exactly an MMO experience, so less character customization is fine. Although the character models certainly look dated.
Ugly motherfucker.
After you're done with your Sims character, be prepared to get a taste of what's coming in the game. A single round of a regular circuit and drift event in a preset Silvia S15. A lot of the game mechanics will be shown here with the betting systems, get a feel for the handling for both events, the damage model for the cause, and this. With the tutorial done, it's time to actually get the game started with our first car purchase. There's over 15 cars in total as a selection. It's understandable if you'd be in a dilemma over them. All you need to pay attention to is which car catches your interest and the details listed at the top right. The performance range tells you the car's minimum and maximum league in case you want to just keep upgrading the same car and the drivetrain. You don't really need to worry about the special tags such as muscle car or good drift car. We'll get to them once we're in the higher leagues. But how do we progress into the higher leagues? Do we need the approval of the mighty Tyrone? Well, nah. At least not anymore since they've ditched the respect system from the previous game. Instead, the game requires a number of challenges to be completed. These can range from simply just winning specific races, but it can go more in depth and specific specific, like winning a number of bets against specific opponents or spooking specific rivals mid-race. Some of these challenges also come with bonus visual mods or performance prototypes attached to them, giving some much needed incentives for the more tedious challenges. Once the requirements are met, a final race for the league will be open. If you win that, you can progress to the next league, which opens up even more challenges, cars, and game modes. That's pretty much it for the game's loop. You'll probably notice this game doesn't really have any special goals to achieve. There is no revenge story, no special rival to beat, no mystery plot, and no specific reason to reach the top. The devs knew enough people are here for the simple need of fast cars, hot babes, and extorting Bobby out of his retirement funds.
I'll take that action.
But if we're gonna keep doing that, we're gonna need to always be prepared for each league. While you can't buy a car, you can also just choose to upgrade your existing one. First up is the visuals. You gotta show some style with the car for the audience. There are several options here from the body parts, which includes bumpers, skirts, spoilers, and etc. But this game also allows upgrades for the seats, headlights, wing door conversions, steering wheel, and some goofy veil side wide body kits, with a mix of known manufacturers and Juice 2 originals. For the vinyl, it's pretty much the usual stuff you'd expect out of this editor. The big gimmick is with some of the sticker options being locked behind as packs in the visual extras menu. You can unlock them with the visual mod badges from certain challenges, and these packs are quite unique with options ranging from more hot women, the vinyls from the very first game, and some of THQ's other IPs included. Now for the performance upgrades, it's not exactly complex either, but it has some twists to the system. By default, we can purchase a level 1 upgrade for each part, being the power, handling, and weight. But to unlock the higher level parts, a challenge must be completed. Just like progression challenges, these can contain some of the more basic ones such as time attacks, but can also become as CBT as a perfect lap challenge. And the level 3 challenge always ends up being a 1v1 race against the stick, Driver X. These races themselves can be pretty torturous, especially since Driver X is always in a car much faster than you. But you do get a little bit of a head start, so you can kind of exploit his AI and just block him. The last upgrades are prototypes. These are only available for the final class the car can achieve, so unfortunately no starter car can truly achieve the ending of this game. Or is it? But then what about the thing called the Extreme Nitrous? They're only usable in the Extreme Nitrous events. With the regular Nitro, you usually need to do power slides or drift to fill them during a race. But in the Extreme Nitro events, this rule no longer applies, because the Nitro is constantly being refilled as you go, and you lose a bit from collisions. These are usually just modifiers for the circuit events, which can usually mean you'll be dealing with one of these events. There's also regular circuits, which have a few laps to them, with 7 or 8 cars on the track. For some that enjoy longer events, there's also the Eliminator and Endurance events. Eliminator uses a lap basis for its elimination system, which could be a much better or faster method than using a timer, especially on the higher leagues. And Endurance races, I don't think I really need to explain that. And the last man standing being the wall is lava mode. You can race regularly, but you can also just exploit the game's system by using the spook mechanic to make everyone crash into the wall and get eliminated. Meanwhile, on the drift side of things, they're separated into several game modes as well, from Drift Solo, which only requires you to reach a score number until the final lap. There is a more extreme version as well called Drift Endurance, making you reach the target score in a single long drift chain. And if you hit the wall once, your run is dead. Another type is Drift Obliterator, where you're required to gain enough score per lap or risk getting eliminated, mixed in with regular racing rules. And the Drift King event, which is just the usual score versus run. No need to worry about crashing into the opponents though. The devs were smart enough to make you not take a penalty from hitting each other. Then there's also championships, which require you to beat more than one race, usually around 3 or 4 races in total. Now there are other event types which I'm pretty sure caught your interest, although these are pretty risky. We have the pink slip exchanges, and these can be applied to any race event with the exception of Drift Solo and Endurance. Interestingly enough, pink slips and driver beds seem to have an effect on the opponent's performance. There's a ton of time where I notice the AI is behaving more aggressively and is pushing their car harder when these modifiers are in place. So at the cost of getting free cars, you'll get some higher and harder races to contend with. Just be sure not to lose your own ride in the process. At the very least, the AI will use your car immediately, giving that window of chance to steal a car back again. There is also another event type which is quite exploitable for relatively quick cash earnings, that being the spectator bettings. It's almost no different to those weird horse bettings, but you got some power to control the odds. During each lap you get 3 ammunitions to give any driver max nitro or take them away entirely. Now imagine you pick the driver at the very last place, you go all in on them and just play the game.
Later.
Baby!
Congrats, you can join the rich society now with Bobby as well. This game mode is both abusable and very profitable. It's such an easy way to earn $1 million every run. But don't worry, Bobby, not even this thing can replace you.
Oh, baby. Call my bluff.
Just don't do the extreme nitrous events because your booze will mean nothing in that game mode. While the concept itself is quite goofy, it is an interesting way to sort of have that horse betting scene as an actual mechanic. Unfortunately, drag and sprint races are removed completely for the title, limiting this game's variety to only 2 game modes with a sizable amount of variance, some of which certainly help provide different challenges, but I bet some of you already realize or know just how awfully gimmicky some of them are, like the Last Man Standing circuit. But on the other hand, some of them provide interesting challenges like the Drift Endurance or Obliterator, so you might want to invest into a good drift car for some of these events. Drift cars have a slight difference in their physics. They don't lose as much speed during power slides and circuit races, and they are a bit more responsive when the drift physics is deployed, but they're not significant enough from the regular cars anyways. With a total of 89 cars scattered throughout the different leagues, ranging from the cheap shitboxes up to the hypercars. To the old pure American muscle and the European supercars or JDM enjoyers, something will at least catch your interest in the game. And with the way league performance and pink slips are handled, riding in more than one car the whole way is unavoidable, especially once those muscle car and supercar exclusive events come into play. Unlike the character models, they look pretty good. The same can't really be said about the way the physics are handled. Cars just react weirdly to collisions. They just bounce all over the place. While they are pretty useful in case a spooked opponent becomes an unavoidable hit, it also means some collisions behave in such a bizarre way you'll likely lose control immediately. This gets extra worse with the higher leagues, as a lot of the narrow stages work well with the slower cars, not so much when the Koenigsegg's and Paganis are ripping through the streets, which is a bit weird when we know the devs can and will take a whole lot of liberties with their tracks. Despite only taking place in countries such as the roads of San Francisco, Tokyo, and London, with some wilderness trips to the snowy mountains of Germany, the Roman Colosseum, even drifting right under the Eiffel Tower, and above the waters of Sydney's Opera House. Each circuit track having different variations of route will certainly help spice things up every now and then, although by League 1 you're likely to have already seen them all. Also, you'll notice the drift events use a completely different mentality from the circuit races, resulting in probably some of the most innovative fantasy tracks I've seen in a while. The Sydney drift track, if you notice, are taking place entirely on top of the vast Australian waters, and some of them get even wackier like the big multi-story drift we get in Tokyo. Then we have the DNA system, which is a pretty useless system introduced for this game. It identifies if someone is cool, reckless, or balanced, but despite all that, it's not exactly accurate either. AI, for example, will act in a very similar behavior even when they have widely different DNA ratings. For the players though, this simply works as a way of achievements, counting how many overtakes you've done, how many total scores you've achieved from drifting, how many people you've given a heart attack to, how many bets you've done, and everything else this game has to offer.
Oh, I'm in.
But other than that, it's pretty useless. It gets even worse once you take notice of Bobby and his gambling addiction. Like, why is he a high but cool gambler? The man always doubles any bet he's given. Leon has the exact same driver bet stats as him, yet he rarely even increases the bet. It just exposes how inaccurate the DNA system is in general for the AI, making it hard to even fairly judge what each opponent does the best. We can check out DNAs of some celebrities and staffs of hot import nights within the DNA gallery system and do some custom races with them as an option. Despite taking a different turn than its predecessor, Cruise as a mechanic is still around, although with a lot less importance. For context, in Juiced 1 you race against 8 different gang leaders, racing against them and their crew members, while also being able to build up your own crew to challenge any territory of Angel City. In Juiced 2, while you can still hire drivers to join your crew, the idea of gang wars or crew battles is pretty much long gone, or at the very least, not at the forefront of the game. Thanks to the way progression is handled, crew battles became something completely optional. You can even outright ignore its existence entirely and nothing would change. It's a bit tragic the more I think about it, as the system technically would fit well enough in Juice 2. If we scooch over to the DNA area, we can even see some of Hot Import Night's own different crews, but the biggest missed opportunity here is being unable to recruit rivals to join your crew. Considering there are around 10 named rivals in the game, it shouldn't be a problem for us to have one rival working as our crew member, as they can just be replaced by another AI opponent for non-crew events. It can also provide more depth with the spectator betting system, having us support our teammates and bringing glory for our team instead. Sadly, we can only hire some random drivers we've never seen before, except this lad here. He might be expensive, but he's worth it. Besides, Bobby's paying the bill. Actually, now that I've talked about it, who are these rivals anyways? You race with them on a daily basis, but there seems to be a lot less interactions with them compared to the rivals in Juiced 1. Most you'll get from them are their stereotypical behavior, including some of their dialogue lines.
That's cool. Just one thing. Keep the bump and the grinding for the dance club.
I think... Well... Okay. But it's gonna be close.
I'll take that action.
Which are going to be repetitive just like the announcers. They do have some pretty good looking liveries, if only they could be upscaled. Just kinda wish there was something more with them other than the usual taunts, grunts, and angry remarks. But nevertheless, I certainly had fun with this experience. The change in direction from the more underground vibes of Juice 1 to something more legitimate with Juice 2 was something I was not really expecting, and the change in handling is also a bit of a hit and miss, yet not enough for it to be a detriment. I can see why some people, specifically fans of the first game, would be heavily disappointed with this, but I'd implore people to at least give it a chance and try it out. If not for me, then at least do it for Bobby, or maybe the hot models they spent a lot of the budget on. And there are other versions of the game I'd probably cover in the future, like the PSP version, which apparently had some notable changes to the formula, if you guys are interested in that idea.